Good afternoon again. So I'm back for another video lecture which I will be discussing aggravating circumstances under Article 14 of the Revised Penal Code. Again, just a gentle reminder, this video is for educational purposes only and for your eyes only. So you're not permitted to share or copy or video this lecture. Anything that is violated will be dealt with under the law. Right? So, let's start. So, what is an aggravating circumstance? Again, aggravating circumstance is a criminal it's a circumstance that affects the criminal liability of an accused. Okay? So, kumbaga, kapag itong mga aggravating circumstances na to ay attendant or it exists in the commission of the crime, ang magiging effect niyan is mag-i-increase yung penalty niyan. Tapos, pero pala, it won't exceed the maximum penalty provided for by law. Okay? So, hindi pwede na hanggang life imprisonment, tapos masigit pa doon. No. So, yun, it increase the penalty, pero it should not exceed the maximum penalty provided for by law. Okay? And it changes the nature of the crime. Bakit? Kasi they're based on perversity of the offender. So, it based on the perversity of the offender manifested in the commission of the crime. For example, yung motivating power niya, yung sobra niyang pagganti. Okay? Yung place of the commission of the crime, kung tinake advantage na ba yung gabi para gawin yung crime niya para wala makakita. Yung means and ways employed, like for example, yung pinapahirapan, tinotorture, binabalatan, okay? Nininail cutter yung balat. So, those kind of means and ways employed to commit the crime. Or kung committed ba yan ng gang or ng maraming tao, by a band, okay? So, yung time, sabi ko nga kanina, kung like for example, inantay niya yung gabi, hating gabi, para i-commit yung crime, and other personal circumstances ng offender party. Ng offender dun sa offended party. Okay. Let's now discuss the kinds of aggravating circumstances. Like mitigating circumstance, aggravating is also have kinds. Okay. First, generic aggravating circumstance. Ano ba tong generic na to? Ito yung kapantay niya sa mitigating is an ordinary mitigating circumstance. Okay? So, ano ba tong generic circumstance na to? Those that generally applies to crimes. So, take note of this ha. I will be enumerating ano-ano yung generic aggravating circumstance. Okay? Under Article 14, Paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 14, 18, 19, and 20, except means of motor vehicles. Again, under the Article 14, the generic aggravating circumstances are Article 14, Paragraphs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 14, and 18, except means of motor vehicles. Okay? The next kind of aggravating circumstance, specific aggravating circumstance. Those that applies only to particular crimes. Like for example, ignominy in crimes of chastity or cruelty and treachery in crimes against persons. When we say crimes against persons, the crime is committed against the person, not the property, not the chastity, not the public office. So, if there is cruelty, like for example, yun nga, binabalatan ka ng buhay, pinapahirapan ka, tinatorture ka muna bago ka patayin, that's a specific aggravating circumstance. And, what includes specific aggravating circumstance? So, take note of this one. It includes paragraph 3 of Article 14, paragraph 15, 16, 17, and 21 except dwelling. Again, specific aggravating circumstance includes paragraph 3, 15, 16, 17, and 21 except dwelling. Okay? Now, we move to the next kind of aggravating circumstance. It's the qualifying aggravating circumstance. What is the qualifying aggravating circumstance? Qualifying aggravating circumstance change the nature of the crime. Okay? When there is evident premeditation that qualifies the killing of murder. Like for example, under Article 248 of the Revised Penal Code, it enumerates the qualifying aggravating circumstance in qualifying the killing of a person to murder. Like for example, the crime committed is homicide. Okay? Homicide. When you say homicide, there is intent to kill. Pero bakit hindi siya murder? What sets apart homicide and murder is the presence of aggravating circumstance of like treachery. When we say treachery, pag sinabing treachery in layman's term, yung tao na inatake mo at pinatay mo is not in the position to save himself. Kumbaga, halimbawa, nakatalikod, inatake mo tapos pinatay mo, ganun siya. So, it qualifies homicide lang dapat, pero since may treachery, it becomes murder. And treachery is a qualifying circumstance of the crime of murder. Kaya it changes the nature of the crime eh. So, mas tataas. The penalty of murder is 20 years to life imprisonment. Unlike homicide, depending on its stage, if it's attempted, frustrated, or consummated homicide, it's like 12 years to 20 years. So imagine the variance in the penalty imposed between murder and homicide. Okay? Dahil lang yan sa qualifying aggravating circumstance na treachery. And there are also others which I will enumerate further. So another kind of aggravating circumstance is inherent. So what is an inherent aggravating circumstance? Those that must of necessity accompany the commission of the crime. So for example, evident premeditation. Evident premeditation is one of the aggravating circumstance. If the crime of robbery, theft, estafa, adultery, and concubinage is attended, inherent siya sa evident premeditation. Meaning, kapag yun yung crime committed, there is automatic an aggravating circumstance of evident premeditation. If robbery, theft, estafa, adultery, and concubinage, the evident premeditation is inherent or likas na doon sa mga crimes na iyon. Ang evident premeditation na aggravating circumstance. And the last classification of aggravating circumstance is special. What is a special aggravating circumstance? Those which arise under the special condition to increase the penalty offense and cannot be offset by any mitigating circumstance. Kasi, when we say cannot be offset, I will just give an example if a crime is committed, tapos may mitigating circumstance yan, like for example, acted with discernment yung minor na 15 to 18 years old, that's a mitigating circumstance. Pero the crime committed is with evident premeditation. So diba ang effect ng mitigating is to lower the penalty. The effect of the aggravating is to increase the penalty. Okay? Yung mitigating, ibababa niya. Yung aggravating, itataas niya. Pero dahil dun sa crime committed ng robbery, may isang mitigating at may isang aggravating circumstance, ma-offset lang yan. It's as if walang nangyaring kahit anong circumstance that will affect his or her criminal liability. Pero under this kind of aggravating circumstance, which is a special, okay, these are just the following special aggravating circumstances. First, quasi-recidivism. Second, complex crimes. Third, error in personae. And fourth, taking advantage of a public position. So, those are the things that are included in the special aggravating circumstance. Kung quasi-recidivist yan, when you say quasi-recidivist, paulit-ulit na na nagko-commit ng crime under the revised penal code. When you say complex crime, robbery with homicide, robbery with rape, okay, yon yung mga doblihan. That's a complex crime. Error in personae, as what we have discussed earlier in the first, which is included in your midterm examination. And then, taking advantage of the public position. So, those are the special aggravating circumstance. Okay? Kapag generic yan, again, those that generally apply to all crimes, pero pag specific yan, nag-a-apply lang sa particular crimes. Yun. So, the qualifying circumstance, sabi ko nga, it changes the nature of the crime. Yung binigay ko example ko kanina, by treachery, so pwede din yung with the aid of armed men. Qualifying circumstance din yan na nambugbog kayo na may kasama kang armado, okay, or by means of poison, okay, and with grave abuse of confidence, like for example, ang nagnakaw, may nagkaroon ng nakawan, ang ninakawan na employer, ang nagnakaw employee, so merong repose confidence, trust and confidence doon sa employee, pero pinagnakawan pa rin siya. Okay? So, yun. And, inherent, okay, those that must and necessity accompany the commission of the crime. So, they are already elements of the crime. So, hindi na sila consider as against the offender na mag-i-increase pa. Like, for example, the crime of robbery. Hindi mo na pwedeng lagyan niya na evident premeditation as aggravating circumstance para mapataas yung penalty. Bakit? Kasi inherent na siya sa crime of robbery. So, automatic, the crime of robbery, meron na yung aggravating circumstance sa evident premeditation, and it will no longer affect the penalty of the accused in committing the crime. Okay? So, as for the special, yun nga, those things that I enumerated, special aggravating circumstance, the quasi-recidivism, paulit-ulit na paggawa ng paglabag sa revised penal code. Second, complex crime, robbery with rape, robbery with homicide, and then taking advantage of public position. Yon, pwede din the use of firearms, like for example, nakakommit ka ng murder tapos unlicensed yung baril. So that's a special aggravating circumstance. And syndicated crime or group, yung done made by a syndicate, yung mga sindikato na nangunguha ng bata, ganyan. So, yun. So, that's all for the kinds of aggravating circumstance. I'll be cutting this video up, and then for the next coming videos, I'll be discussing the aggravating circumstance proper, their elements, and how it is being applied. So, thank you for listening, and I'll see you to the next video.